Hi everyone, it's time for our weekly overview. And in general, at least I feel like I have a little bit better or more upbeat news to share astrologically. There's room for a turn as the week continues. First and foremost, we just had a full moon a couple of days ago, on the 21st. And really, as I've mentioned to you, the week after a full moon is the most balanced energy in order to be productive. So if you have been waiting perhaps all month to some extent, given how unwieldy the energies have been in June, for some people expansive, especially the first 2 weeks of June, eclipsy almost in terms of change in status, visibility. For some people more overt, for some people a kind of inner sense of resolve to move forward in a certain direction. But as I've been mentioning to you, the sheer number of squares, particularly to Saturn and Neptune, and the fact that the new moon in Gemini squared Saturn means till about July the 5th, we continue to be in what I call Gemini season, the month of Gemini. And some of the sense of urgency, some of this feeling of, oh God, there's stuff that I've got to do and I've got to act on, but I can't get to everything. And if I don't act on this, then this could happen. And, the dominance of the Mars square Uranus on June the 11th and feeling that overtake our lives till about June the 18th, which means that activities or actions or priorities or opportunities in the Taurus part of our chart, the house occupied by Taurus, may well have overtaken our ability to take the actions that we were feeling pressured to take, to stabilize the Pisces part of our chart. Now, for those of you to whom these signs and houses and charts and just all I'm trying to say is that June so far has been unwieldy, and one of you viewers mentioned it perfectly, which is it's almost the sense of I've done all I can and I'm doing all I can, but things don't seem to be moving necessarily. For other people, I have to say, especially with those first 2 weeks in June being related to the new moon solar eclipse, the April 8th new moon solar eclipse in Aries on April the 8th. For me, the fact that June the 8th, the week before, week after, I always see a sort of it's like strings and harmony in terms of events, events related to that eclipse. For some people, as I said, the first 2 weeks of June could be more decisive and more eclipsy with regard to a direction that people want to move in, and as I said, in some cases, visibility, etc. Why it is that annoying, anyway, I'm not going to say it. There's a child, it's Sunday, and children should play outside. I'll just say that. Why they must play outside while I'm doing the video, I don't know. I'm not sure I quite understand. There's something about, as those of you know, when I'm doing a video and I am trying to be articulate and get my thoughts out, which are clear to me inside, but I'm trying to, with astrology, there's always these correlations that we're trying to make with what has happened in the past and where we're at and all that kind of stuff, and how can I contextualize this and how can I bake this cake? And when I'm in that place, as you know, every ambient noise is magnified. It's just the most bizarre state I go into. And it's not like a kind of mesmeric focus, because when you're really in a kind of relaxed focus, when you're playing a video game or when you're lost in something, all that gets tuned out. You don't even hear that stuff. There's something about being in a certain space and the effort of trying to articulate something and make sense of it that just, anyway, why am I going on about this? Let's come back to the week ahead. Point number one, energies are balanced. We're not dealing with the unwieldy energies of either the full moon or some of the carryover, the unwieldy energies of all the squares to Saturn and Neptune, even though we're in the month that overall is characterized and encoded with a square to Saturn. the new moon on June the 6th squared Saturn. We are finally in a week where the energies stand to be balanced enough that we can actually get crap done. So if you are feeling like you need to get crap done and you want a certain amount of harmonious, energetic sense of balance to do so, this is your week. Now, if you're sick or something's going on or, blah, 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 that's out of my hands. But at least as far as lunar energy is concerned, which is important, after the end of this week, once we get past June the 30th, as we get to July the 1st, which is next Monday, and as we head into the July the 4th weekend, or as we head towards Tuesday, especially Wednesday, Thursday of next week, the moon is going to be dark just before a new moon, and you're not going to have, it's going to be that much harder to have energy. July 4th being the day before the new moon, is actually a great day to sit somewhere and just chill out and watch the fireworks, or frankly just stay at home and hope to catch some fireworks out of a window. It has that kind of energy. It is a new moon in Cancer. So point number one, energetically balanced week for productivity coming up. May you be able to get things done and get things off your to-do list. I hope that for you. It'll be a nice feeling. The thing number two for this week that starts to shift the energy, as you know, and this is why I did my last couple of videos. I did the video on Mars going through Taurus. I did the video on the planets transiting the Sun, Mercury, Venus, especially transiting the sign of Cancer. Now, it is worth stating that there are multiple seasons going on right now, and your energy will be divided among these three parts of your chart. We do have Mars in Taurus, Mars transiting Taurus. Now, the next major aspect Mars makes there, generally, if you have other aspects in you to the natal planets in your birth chart that Mars can make while it is in Taurus, you will likely experience those in competition with everything else that's going on. But Mars is going to conjunct Uranus on July the 15th. That's a little bit away, but wherever Mars is, a lot of our energy goes. So that Taurus part of the chart that has been active through the North Node eclipses between September, October 2021 to October the 20th, 2023, where we had Jupiter since May 2023 to May the 25th, 2024. One of the two parts of the chart till May 25th that I said has a lot of forward pull and momentum and opportunity associated with it. We now have Mars there, pursuing goals, pursuing opportunities, taking action, being active, and drawing boundaries where you need to, and managing conflict and competition, always with Mars. Err on the side of assertion, but not aggression. And some of this idea of conflict may not necessarily be personal. It may just come with the territory. When you're going after what it is that you want and taking care of business, you run into people who one could be at cross purposes with just by virtue of who they are. And one of you said to me so wisely when we did a reading, and it's a great reminder to meet people where they're at. Don't expect people to be who you want them to be. Take them to be who they are, and take things from there. It's still a Gemini month as far as I'm concerned till July the 5th. So if there are pending actions that you need to take in the Gemini part of your chart, whether there are actions that you have wanted to take related to that part of the chart with regard to the direction you want to move in, or managing any crises due to necessity, by all means continue to do so. And if there are any actions that you need to take related to the Gemini part of the chart that could help stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, and those of you who see my videos know that when I say the Pisces part of the chart, I'm talking about the house occupied by the sign of Pisces in your natal chart, the house occupied by the sign of Gemini in your natal chart. That's what I mean by the Gemini part of the chart. If there are any actions that can be taken from a Gemini part of the chart to pursue spiritual or artistic goals related to the Pisces part of your chart, then you can continue to do so. The majority of the personal planets all of that said, are now in the sign of Cancer. In the Cancer part of your chart, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus. In order, they are Mercury, Venus, and the Sun. On July the 5th, we're going to have a new moon in the Cancer part of the chart. By that time, Mercury will be in Leo. Mercury is in the sign of Cancer till July the 2nd, I believe. And Mercury is the prime mover this week. As the personal planets go through the transit the sign of Cancer, the house occupied by the sign of Cancer in your birth chart, they will, in the following sequence, square the nodes, the North Node and the South Node, trine Saturn, square Chiron, trine Neptune. Even more specifically, they will square the Aries North Node and the Libra South Node, then they will trine Saturn in Pisces, Saturn transiting through Pisces. They will square Chiron in Aries, they will trine Neptune in Pisces. And right after they trine Neptune, they're going to move into the sign of Leo. And this week, Mercury, having already squared the nodes yesterday, Mercury this week on the 26th of June trines Saturn. On the 28th of June, squares Chiron. On the 20th, and that's it. Those are 2 of 4 aspects that Mercury is going to make. On the 26th, Venus will square the nodes as well from Cancer. So the main aspects this week, this is a general reading. On the 26th of June, Venus squares the North Node and the South Node, and Mercury trines Saturn. On the 28th, Mercury squares Chiron. On the 29th, this is the last of it, Saturn goes retrograde. Saturn spends a fair amount of the year retrograde every year. The only thing that is relevant to me about Saturn going retrograde is that if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, you will likely feel Saturn's restrictions and needs and demand for responsible action. And insofar as Saturn's transit through Pisces is concerned, you, dear people who have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, and there are quite a few of us, because Saturn spends so much of its time retrograde every year, are going to feel the pressure and the stimulus to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart where there have been crises brewing since 2012, peaking in 2016, 17, for some people 14, 15, but really 16 especially, 2016 especially. You're going to feel, if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, you're going to feel the need to start to pay attention to stabilizing, acting responsibly, structuring, honoring Saturn's transit through the sign of Pisces. And that starts on June the 29th. Now, Saturn is going to be stationary. It's going to go retrograde, and Saturn is going to be retrograde for a while. I'm going to tell you till when. That's what I'm clicking away, and I'm going to talk about that. So I don't know. Sometimes when a planet is stationary, you feel its impact more. So there may be something that comes up by the end of this week where you're like, oh, here's Saturn. Here is where I need to be paying attention. Here is a crisis that Saturn is creating, saying, all right, person with Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, you better start to pay attention to how you're going to solve your problems in the Pisces part of the chart and get rid of those crises and manage them and stabilize them. So for some of you, as you deal with the 29th of June and heading to the 29th of June and for the week past it, you may feel that pressure. And ultimately, Saturn is trying to work for our benefit and on our behalf. And Saturn is only concerned with us meeting our fullest potential on this earthly plane. But that means if things are messy somewhere, Saturn is expecting us to act wisely, maturely, unemotionally, Paying attention to cause and effect. As I say with Saturn, it doesn't matter if you're right. It matters if you're effective. Because you can be right about something and still take action on something in such a way that it ultimately hurts you. You can be right about something, and in the process of being right about something and drawing a line or boundary, set a boundary in a way that is rash or not completely thought through and invite greater antagonism, for example. Or you can take action thinking things through and paying special attention to what's the most effective way to solve something. Remain relatively confident and secure and calm and collected, as Saturn would expect you to be and want you to be. Strategic, smart, karmically as clean as possible, clear about intentions, clear about manners and manner, and find that Saturn rewards you. So for those of you who have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, this week and next week may act as a bit of a wake-up call to say, oh, Saturn's not going anywhere. It's my turn to start to put my attention towards the Pisces part of the chart and to honor Saturn and to stabilize it. For those of you who have Saturn direct in your birth chart, you might get a bit of a break when Saturn is retrograde so that you can incorporate the lessons and the kind of proverbial Saturnian beating up that Saturn has been doing for you to get you into sort of integrity shape and structural shape and acting in your best interests shape and confronting self-sabotaging tendencies shape that Saturn has been doing while it's been direct. And you may get a chance to actually incorporate some of those lessons as Saturn goes back over the degrees that's going to go retrograde over. When does Saturn go direct? This is driving me bananas. Hold on, everybody. Saturn is retrograde June the 29th. Enjoy the silence by all means. Good golly, Miss Molly. I'm getting really peeved with myself. Does anyone use that word anymore? How could I have been this irresponsible? Sorry. Hold on one second. I'm just going to find it. Sorry, this is driving me bananas. I have all the transits in my own handy-dandy PowerPoint deck. Okay, so we'll deal with Saturn in a second. I'll give you the date when Saturn goes direct in a second. Oh, annoyed with myself. Now, Mercury is the prime mover this week. Mercury is the planet of communication, interactions, technology, emails, social media, phones, Wi-Fi. Mercury, the communication planet, the mercurial planet, mental processing, talking, writing, presenting, resumes, sales, chatter, gossip, organizing, planning, learning, teaching, communicating, transacting, dealing with customer service, commuting, particularly local distances, neighbors, neighborhoods, people you interact with on a day-to-day basis, colleagues, networks, siblings, relatives, cars, vehicles. Mercury is the prime mover. And Mercury makes the first aspect this week on the 26th that starts to usher in July energy. Those of you who've been watching my channel know that I've said that May is like walking to the end of the diving board. June is diving off the diving board. Some people are doing it more successfully than others. Some of us are holding on to the diving board. We need to dive off of it. This is a great week to take action. July is the week when we start to swim to the other side of the pool. May and July have greater flow. June has an edginess to it. That does continue till the 5th of July. That said, hold on, let me find that Saturn going direct to degree, because it's going to drive me bananas. Oh, here we are on November the 15th. So Saturn is retrograde from June the 29th to November the 15th. Now, I can actually relax for the rest of my life. Do I have it written down on my PowerPoint handy dandy thing? Do you care? No. And I'm sorry. Don't. All my videos are not like this. Yes, I do have it. Okay. Now that's over. Mercury trines Saturn. So far, while the personal planets have been going over the sign of Gemini, and when we had the new moon in Gemini on June the 6th, it squared Saturn. Squares are edgy. The faster moving planets are stopped in a certain sense, checked by the slower moving planets. In this case, Saturn, the taskmaster, the actor responsibly, the make responsible decisions, the deal with consequences, karmic consequences, consequences of our actions, consequences of shoddy intentions, shoddy execution on our part, or excellent, wise, mature intentions and excellent, wise, mature execution on our part. And the faster moving planet has to act in the part of the chart that it is transiting, the Gemini part of the chart, in order to support Saturn in what it is trying to do in the Pisces part of the chart. When we deal with trines, the flow is much more harmonious. The challenge with trines, as is often said in contemporary astrology, is that you may not feel them as much as you feel the squares. We feel the squares as edginess. We feel the squares in the need to act. We feel the squares as though our flow is being stopped by something. With the trines, the flows are there. And with trines, it's one of two things. Either you're harvesting the results, reaping the results of what you did while the squares were active, or you might have the opportunity, now that the flow is easier and the energy is easier, friendlier, to finally be able to take action in a way that gets some of the resistance out of the way. If you feel that you have not been able to take Mercury-related actions, communication, transactions, to support Saturn stabilizing, acting in your own best interests in a mature manner in the Pisces part of the chart, if you're trying to go in a spiritual artistic direction, come up with plans, structure, goals to make that happen. If you've been dealing with foggy behavior that has been coloring your entire relationship with the Pisces part of the chart, deceptive behavior, either your deceptive behavior, someone else's, the consequences, Saturn is demanding that that be stabilized and clarified, and your own role in creating what is occurring also be acknowledged and managed, and you be more discerning around what is actually going on that is potentially deceptive and foggy and what is not. But understandably, once we start to deal with fogginess, and so we view everything through that lens. If you have not been able to, or don't feel like you have been able to sufficiently take action, communication-related action especially, to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, crises that have been going on since 2012, but peaking in 2016-17, especially 14-15, but especially 16-17. Then this week, as you head towards the 25th, 26th, you may have a chance to do so with greater ease, greater poise, in a more relaxed and confident and flowing manner. Just keep in mind that you're trying to honor Saturn, so it isn't time for outbursts. It is time for concise mature, wise, thought through, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, kind of planning or communication or checking something or someone or drawing a boundary somewhere, you have that opportunity. That trine to Saturn is the trines to Saturn and Neptune as the planets move through the sign of Cancer, the Mercury, then Venus, then the Sun. And the fact that the new moon on July the 5th is trining Saturn, as opposed to squaring Saturn, which is what the new moon on June the 6th did, is the first shift of moving from edgy, requiring action that could be exciting for some but paralyzing for others, June, to a more relaxed. Yes, these planets are squaring the nodes and squaring Chiron. And yesterday's video, day before yesterday's video that I did on the planets going over the sign of Cancer, we'll talk about those in greater detail as to what those squares mean. But it's easier to handle squares to the nodes in Chiron than it is to Saturn and Neptune, which is what we've been dealing with. God, I feel like I passed a kidney stone with that Saturn date. I'm still looking at it here. Shouldn't make jokes about that. So, on the 26th, Mercury trines Saturn. On the 26th, also, Venus squares the North Node and the South Node. So, from the sign of Cancer, where it sits in your chart, what it means to you, what that house stands for, first and foremost, who is in that house, what your relationship with that house is to you, what that house means to you when the personal planets transit over it every year around the same time. It's an important thing to develop a relationship with. Your new year starts when the sun enters your first house. And if you start to develop a relationship in your life with, for example, I'm a Leo rising. For me, it is July 21st to July 21st, July 21st to July 21st. Now, some years it might be July 19th or 20th or 22nd or the 23rd, but roughly. And if I know that every month after that, the sun enters the next house and the next house, the next house, and Mercury and Venus and the new moons are going to, sort of the personal planet annual transit, and I start to pay attention to that every year, I will develop a relationship with each of those parts of the chart because I will, to my surprise, notice what intensifies and what occurs when those transits are occurring. When I was working my corporate job, my second house is Virgo, and I would always get results of performance reviews and salary increases around August into September. I tend to get involved in plays and theater around, or significant events around it happen around December when the sun and sometimes Venus, sometimes Mercury, the new moon, are going over my fifth house. Important side hustle or job astrology related events may occur January, 6th house, but especially around full moons in the 6th house, like we had 2 days ago and a month after. When the planets are going over the sign of Cancer and it's my 12th house, it's very much, there's an element of needing to pull back and there's an element of needing to work behind the scenes a certain amount. What do I need to release to prepare for my new year beginning in about a month's time? So this is what I mean by observing these transits and year after year after year. And you can divide your life into, for me, July 21st to July 21st, July 21st, July 21st. When I have significant moves sometimes to an apartment, to a different city, to something, they are often accompanied by some event occurring in July and heading into August. Three times I had apartment moves so that by the time August 1st was done, another time when I moved to DC, the contract and the information started to come through so that I knew when it was that I was leaving and how it was that I was going to make that happen. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting to get into those done. Not every year is as dramatic. And then when the sun enters the first house, here's your astrology tidbit for the day, because this has nothing to do with this week, really. But when you start to divide your life for you from the sun entering your first house to the sun entering your first house every year and break it up into those 12-month cycles, you might be surprised by what you notice starts to occur when the sun is going over the 12th house and getting ready to enter the first house, and what happens. And within 4 to 6 weeks of the sun entering your first house, you often get a sense of what your next 12 months, broadly, agenda-wise, will be about. Not every year is as dramatic. It's fascinating. So when I talk about Venus transiting the sign of Cancer, and specifically the house occupied by the sign of Cancer in your chart, and say, what relationship do you have with that house? That's kind of what I'm talking about. For people who don't know this, Venus is a planet that is about opportunity, relationships, building relationships, what you value, protecting what you value, your values, money, relationships, finances, luxuries, beauty, the arts. But to me, it comes down to two things: money and relationships. The quality of your abundance is dependent on the quality of your relationships. But at the heart of it, it is your values and what you value. And Venus is a planet that promotes courtliness and harmony and consideration and concern, and a kind of politeness. She likes flow. She doesn't like a lot of agitation. Now, she has a shadow side. She could accused of being too passive, accused of being a little fake with the politeness and not always saying what she means, but velvet glove. But Venus also brings luck and flow and opportunities and blessings in the part of the chart that she transits. Venus squares the north and the south node on the 26th. As we head to the 26th, what Venusian action do you think you need to take to help move you along towards the direction of the Aries North Node eclipses and release what you need to in the Libra part of your chart? The direction that you may have wanted to go in 2023 in April, May, June, July into August have been thwarted from the middle of September or September to March the 24th of this year. So I meant last year, April, May, June, July, August, thwarted September to March, September last year to March this year, forward movement May, June, July of this year, pause August this year, forward movement September, October to mid-November, and then mid-November to next April, its own birth canal. The changes have to become active, even more active. The change has to happen at that time. Choices have to be made. What are you committing to? We'll get to that. But on a temporary basis, what Venusian action, building relationships, harnessing, saving money, coming across this out, nurturing opportunities, do you need to take to honor this trajectory, this direction you need to move in? Where are the open doors? Now, it's a different quality. Venus is going through the 10th house. It's a question of availing of opportunities and relationships. It's a much more overt action. For someone like me with Venus through the 12th house, it's much more behind the scenes. It might be more about what I need to prepare to release certain things, to prepare for my need. This is what I mean by what is your relationship with the house occupied by the sign of Cancer. 26 Venus squares the nodes, 26 Mercury trines the Saturn. As this week goes on, it's the Mercury trine Saturn that for me is the most important transit this week. We may feel, those of you who have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, may this week and next week really start to feel Saturn start to get serious with you. But the Mercury trine Saturn is a welcome energy. So you have now about another 3 days to see if there are actions that you can take to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart if you were not able to do so, or hopefully reap some results. Now, on the 28th, Mercury squares Chiron. What actions can Mercury take in the Cancer part of the chart to support the healing that Chiron has been doing in the Aries part of the chart? Remember, the April 8th North Node eclipse this year was conjunct Chiron to the minute. The influence of that eclipse that we are currently under, the North Node solar eclipse in Aries on April the 8th, conjuncting Chiron. And what we're going through till the Aries full moon in the middle of October is very therapeutic. Very, I don't even know if therapeutic is the right word. Healing is the right word. Never an entirely comfortable process. But with Chiron's influence, there's this sense of us returning to ourselves before we were hurt or wounded or damaged by something that goes back to our childhood in the Aries part of the chart. So, in order to continue that healing journey, what actions could be taken by Mercury? Now, when we talk about Venus squaring the nodes and Mercury squaring Chiron, that is much more related to where does it the Aries North Node is asking you to go, and what doors are those, and what is it that you're being asked to release in the Libra part of the chart? Which direction are you trying to go in, and have you been trying to go in since April, May, June, July of last year? That has had these step, release, forward, release, forward, and the process is complete by the end of the first week of June next year. And I describe that process primarily as which are the doors that opened and closed, especially in April of this year, while the eclipses were occurring, giving you clarity as to which diving board you need to start walking down in May. Jump off in June to by July the 5th and start swimming to the other side, and at least end the first lap by the end of July, and then kind of hang out there and take a breather during August while Mercury's retrograde. And that's it. And then on the 29th, the day after that, Saturn goes retrograde. Venus squares the nodes. Mercury squares Chiron. Those other two aspects made from the sign of Cancer to the sign of Aries. And Mercury in Cancer trining Saturn in Pisces. And then finally Saturn going retrograde. That is your week. Energetically more fruitful to be able to get a certain amount of work done. Will not surprise me if a certain amount of your energy is still going to the Taurus part of the chart with Mars transiting there. It is getting darker and darker. I think the sun just set, or it sets in 4 minutes. And outside of that, what is the house occupied by the sign of Cancer in your chart? What actions can be taken there to help you continue to move forward on the eclipse trajectory, the North Node in Aries, the South Node in Libra? And what communications can you complete over the next 3 days that can help stabilize and structure the Pisces part of your chart? If you do not know your birth chart, think about what direction you've wanted to move in that you may have gotten since in the middle of last year, 2023, that you may have gotten confirmation around which way to go during April, May, June, and July being forward movement, moving months. What actions can you take to help support that? Typically, when we're moving towards something, we also have to release something somewhere. I mean, obvious examples are things like you're going to go catch a plane, or you're going to catch a boat. You need to pack, you need to clean, you need to figure out what's happening with the pets. You got to figure out who has a spare set of keys. That's kind of, you are moving apartments. Fine, you've still got to pack and clean up the old apartment, or figure out what you need to do, what you're taking with you, what you're shedding. You are leaving a job. You got to, tie up loose ends or figure out what you're going to release. And even if you've left the job, there's a certain amount of grieving. And even if it's a desired change, what do you need to leave behind? The Libra part of your chart. And what does that part of the chart mean to you? But if you don't know that, think like I just outlined. And when it comes to the Mercury trine Saturn, if you have been trying to move in a spiritual or creative direction, for example, what can you do to help continue to structure that and put some solid plans around that? Or if you've been dealing with some sort of a crisis that has an element of deceptiveness, cloudiness, loss, gaslighting, and you're going to need to examine, where is it you who's playing the cards really close to your chest and coming across as the person who's being a little bit agenda driven? Is it somebody else who's doing it? Then what can you do to help clean up that energy leak? Thank you for making it through this whimsical weekly overview. If you would like me to take a look at your birth chart, my contact information is in the description box below. You can email me there. I can give you information about rates. If you found this video useful, I have a feeling some of you will wonder why you're subscribing to my YouTube channel, given that whole Saturn retrograde moment. But hey, we can be fallible. I'm sorry about that. If that felt like it was random and I was wasting your time, I should have been prepared with that. By all means, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on the bell icon next to it, or hover over it and you'll see a wiggly bell on top. Click on that. You'll be notified when I do new videos. If you are watching these videos on Facebook and Twitter, by the end of July, by the end of July. By the end of July, I will be done posting videos there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on that content. There's a thanks button. You can use that button to contribute to this channel. Like, comment, increases circulation. Thank you to everyone who supports this channel and leaves comments. And I will leave it at that. I think I was going to say, make some sort of stupid joke about how Avi needs to set along with the sun or something like that, because this has been such a zany video. Have a productive week. More than anything else, if there's stuff you want to get done that you're feeling a sense of urgency around, especially, remember the two things that are driving forward are the opportunities that show up and any crises and closed doors that are necessitating that we get into action so that those crises don't turn into catastrophes, right? That's kind of coming out of the April eclipses, the forward movement, because eclipses can lead to open doors, but they can also pull the rug from under our feet. And May, June, and July, when we talk about forward movement, are building on both of those. And the change that we are dealing with when it comes to the nodes, which Venus squares, and Mercury squared yesterday, and Venus, when we have those touching the eclipse points, we're very aware of the changes that we're trying to create in cooperation with those eclipses, which direction we were trying to move towards, and therefore what we need to release. So by all means, if there's only one thing you take from this video, it's to see if you can harness the more balanced energies after a full moon for about a week to really get stuff done. Thank you. Take care.